The February air bit at Simone's cheeks as she climbed out of her car at 2:47 a.m. Her bones ached. Her eyes burned. The overnight shift at the warehouse had been brutal, and she still had to be at the coffee shop by 6 a.m. That gave her exactly 2 hours and 13 minutes to shower, maybe sleep for 40 minutes and get across town. She fumbled with her keys at the side door, the one that led through the garage. The house was dark except for a faint blue glow from the living room. Brandon was probably still up playing video games. Again. As she pushed open the door, his voice hit her like a slap. "Bro, I'm telling you, I got it made." Brandon's laugh echoed through the garage. He was on speakerphone. "She's out there right now, probably dragging herself home from that warehouse gig. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here, feet up, living my best life." Simone froze. Her hand was still on the doorknob. "Man for jobs?" Another voice said through the speaker. "That's crazy. What does she even do with all that money?" "Pays my debts, what else?" Brandon said, and Simone could hear the grin in his voice. "Well, they were my debts. Paid those off months ago, but she doesn't know that. I just keep telling her we're almost there, just a little bit more. She eats it up every time." Laughter erupted from the phone. Multiple voices. This wasn't just one friend. This was a group call. "You're cold, man," someone else said, but they were laughing too. "She really doesn't know?" "Know what? That I've been chilling? That every dollar she breaks her back for goes straight into my account so I can do whatever I want." Brandon paused. "Oh, and get this, Tiffany's been on me about getting a bigger place. I'm thinking about it. Another few months of my personal ATM working overtime, and we can upgrade." Simone's stomach turned to ice. "Wait, Tiffany doesn't feel weird about it?" Another voice asked. "Why would she? She knows the deal. Simone's the workhorse, Tiffany's the fun. It's perfect. I got a maid and a money machine at home, and a girlfriend who actually knows how to have a good time. Best of both worlds, baby." The men on the phone howled with laughter. Someone said something about being a genius. Another called him lucky. Lucky? Nah, man. Strategic. "I told Simone those business debts were drowning me, that I needed her help just until I got back on my feet. She's so busy working she doesn't have time to check if I'm even looking for work anymore. I stopped pretending to job hunt like 6 months ago." Simone's legs trembled. She gripped the doorframe to stay upright. "Here's the best part," Brandon continued, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "She thinks she's being a good wife. Like, she actually believes she's doing this noble thing, standing by her man. I even threw in some tears a few months back, told her how grateful I was. Man, you should have seen her face. She practically glowed. Said she'd do anything for me." "That's messed up," someone said, but they were still laughing. "Messed up? Is brilliant. She leaves before I wake up, comes home after I'm asleep. We barely even talk anymore. I got a whole separate life she doesn't know about. Tiffany and I go out every weekend. Sometimes during the week too. Simone's too tired to notice or care. What if she finds out? She won't. She's too exhausted to think straight. Plus, I got her believing she's doing this for us, for our future. She thinks once the debts are paid, we'll go back to normal. Take vacations, start a family, all that garbage. But why would I mess up this setup? I'm living rent-free with a personal servant who pays all the bills." More laughter. Someone made a joke about getting themselves a Simone. "The crazy thing is," Brandon went on, "she used to ask questions. Like, why wasn't I helping more, why wasn't I looking harder for work? But I just kept telling her I was trying, that the economy was bad, that I was sending out applications every day. She bought it. Now she doesn't even ask anymore. She's like a robot. Work, sleep, work, sleep. It's beautiful." Simone felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart breaking. That had already broken months ago, she just hadn't noticed. This was something else. Something harder. Something cold. "You're a legend, man," someone said through the speaker. "I know," Brandon replied. "Hey, I gotta go. Tiffany just texted. We're meeting up for breakfast in a few hours. She found this new place with amazing pancakes. Life is good, boys. Life is real good." He ended the call. Simone heard him stretch, heard the creak of the couch as he stood up. She quickly and quietly backed out of the doorway, closing it with barely a sound. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She stood in the garage in the dark, her body shaking. Not from the cold. From something else entirely. 2 years. 2 years of working herself into the ground. 2 years of barely sleeping, of missing meals, of pushing through pain and exhaustion. 2 years of believing she was helping the man she loved get back on his feet. And he had been laughing at her the whole time. Simone walked back to her car on numb legs. She sat in the driver's seat and stared at the garage door. She should cry. She should scream. She should storm inside and throw his things into the street. But she did none of those things. Instead, she started the car and drove away. She had 45 minutes before her shift at the coffee shop started. That was enough time to start thinking clearly. Enough time to stop being the fool Brandon thought she was. Enough time to plan. 2 years earlier, Simone had believed in promises. "Baby, I know this is hard," Brandon had said, holding both her hands across their kitchen table. His eyes were wet. His voice shook. "But I swear to you this is temporary. 6 months, maybe a year at most. Just until I get these business debts cleared." Simone had looked at the stack of papers he'd spread before her. Credit card statements. Loan documents. Collection notices. The numbers made her dizzy. $78,000. "How did it get this bad?" she'd asked, her voice small. "I was trying to make something of myself," Brandon said. "The consulting business, remember? I invested everything. I really thought it would work. But the clients didn't come through, and the expenses kept piling up, and now..." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm so ashamed. I never wanted you to know. I wanted to handle it myself." Simone had felt her heart squeeze. They'd been married for 3 years then. She remembered the Brandon she'd fallen for. Confident, charming, full of big dreams. He talked about building an empire, about giving her the life she deserved. "We'll figure it out," she'd said, squeezing his hands. "We're a team, right?" His smile had been so grateful. So relieved. "You're amazing. You know that? I don't deserve you." That week, Simone had picked up a second job. She was already working full-time as an administrative assistant. The pay was okay, but not enough to make a real dent in Brandon's debts while still covering their regular bills. So she'd started waitressing on weekends. Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sunday brunches. Brandon had seemed apologetic at first. He'd made her coffee before she left for her morning job. He'd order takeout for dinner so she wouldn't have to cook when she got home late. He'd massage her feet while she fell asleep on the couch. "I'm looking every day," he'd tell her. "Something's going to come through soon. I can feel it." 3 months passed. Then 6. The debt went down slowly. Too slowly. Simone was exhausted all the time, but Brandon kept showing her the numbers, kept showing her their progress. "See," he'd say, pointing at the statements. "We've already paid off 12,000. We're doing it, baby. Just a little bit longer." So she picked up a third job. Cleaning houses on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The work was hard and the pay was cash under the table, but it was something. Every dollar mattered. Brandon stopped making her coffee. Stopped ordering takeout. She'd come home to find him on the couch, controller in hand, eyes locked on the television screen. "Rough day?" she'd ask, dropping her bags by the door. "You have no idea," he'd say without looking at her. "This job search is killing me. The rejection is brutal." Simone would nod, too tired to push back, and drag herself to the shower. She'd eat whatever leftovers were in the fridge if there were any and collapse into bed. Brandon usually came to bed hours later, smelling like pizza or chips. A year into her multiple jobs, they'd paid off $40,000. Simone should have felt proud, but she just felt hollow. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her friends. The last time she'd read a book or watched a movie or done anything that wasn't work or sleep. "We're over halfway there," Brandon had said, showing her the updated numbers. "You're a superhero, you know that?" But he didn't look at her like she was a superhero. He barely looked at her at all anymore. The fourth job came when the car broke down. They needed $2,000 for repairs and they needed it fast. Simone found overnight warehouse work for nights a week. The pay was better than her other jobs because of the shift differential. "This is just until we get past this rough patch," she told Brandon. "Just a few months." He'd nodded, already turning back to his video game. "Sure, baby. Whatever you think is best." That's when things had really changed. With the overnight shifts, Simone and Brandon barely saw each other. She'd leave for the warehouse at 10 p.m. and get home around 3 a.m. Then she'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours before heading to her morning job at the office. The weekend jobs filled the gaps. She moved through her days like a ghost. Coffee kept her upright. Energy drinks got her through the warehouse shifts. She'd stopped looking in mirrors because she didn't recognize the exhausted woman staring back. Brandon seemed lighter somehow. Happier. She'd catch glimpses of him in the morning before she left for work, and he'd be whistling or humming or smiling at his phone. "Things are looking up," he'd say when she asked. "I think I'm finally getting some traction with the job search." But no job offer ever came. No interview callback. No good news. Just more promises of soon and almost and any day now. The debt kept shrinking. 60,000. 50,000. 45,000. Simone marked each milestone like a prisoner counting days on a cell wall. Each payment meant she was closer to the end, closer to getting her life back. She daydreamed about it sometimes during the long warehouse shifts. What she'd do when the debts were finally paid. She'd quit the extra jobs. She'd sleep for a week straight. She'd reconnect with her friends, take a vacation, remember what it felt like to be human. Brandon would get a job, a real job, and they'd be partners again. Maybe they'd laugh about this someday, about the hard year they'd survived together. It would make them stronger, right? That's what people always said. Hard times either break you or make you stronger. Simone had chosen to believe they'd be stronger. She'd chosen to believe in Brandon's tears, his apologies, his promises. She'd chosen to believe that her effort meant something, that her sacrifice was building toward something better. She'd chosen wrong. But standing in that garage at 2:47 a.m., listening to her husband brag about exploiting her, Simone finally understood the truth. The debt had been paid months ago. Maybe longer. Every dollar she'd earned since then had been pure profit for Brandon. Money he used to fund his real life. His life with Tiffany. The Brandon she'd fallen in love with probably never existed. Or maybe he did once, but this was who he'd become. Someone who could watch his wife work herself to death and feel nothing but satisfaction. Simone sat in her car outside an all-night diner, a cup of coffee going cold in her hands. The coffee shop wouldn't open for another 2 hours. She had time. Time to stop being the fool. Time to start being someone new. Simone didn't go home for 3 days. She called in sick to all 4 jobs, something she'd never done before. Then she checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town and slept for 16 hours straight. When she woke up, her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone who hadn't been broken down and built back wrong. She ordered food. Real food, not gas station sandwiches or vending machine snacks. She took a shower that lasted until the water ran cold. She sat on the motel bed in clean clothes and stared at her phone. Brandon had called twice. Both times after noon, which meant he'd woken up and noticed she wasn't there. His voicemails were casual, unconcerned. "Hey, where are you? Just checking in. Call me back." No worry. No fear that something might have happened to her. Just mild curiosity, like she was a package that hadn't been delivered on time. Simone deleted the messages without responding. She opened her laptop, the one she hadn't touched in months because she was always too tired. Her fingers shook as she logged into their joint bank account. The account where her paychecks were deposited. The account Brandon had access to. The balance was lower than it should be. Much lower. Simone clicked through to the transaction history and felt her stomach drop. Automatic transfers. Every week, sometimes twice a week, money moved from their joint account to an account she didn't recognize. Not huge amounts. 200 here. 300 there. Small enough that she wouldn't notice if she was only glancing at the balance between shifts. But added up over months? Tens of thousands of dollars. She grabbed a notepad from the motel desk and started writing down the account number. Then she opened a new browser tab and logged into Brandon's email. She knew the password because they'd never had secrets from each other. Or at least she thought they hadn't. His inbox was a mess. Hundreds of unread messages. But Simone knew what she was looking for. She typed Tiffany into the search bar. 83 results. Her hands were steady now. That scared her more than the shaking had. She clicked on the first email, dated 8 months ago. "Baby, I transferred the rent money. Should hit your account tomorrow. Can't wait to see the new place." Simone clicked another email. "Dinner reservations confirmed for Saturday at 8. Wear that dress I like." Another. "The trip to Miami was perfect. Thanks for an amazing weekend. You're worth every penny." Every penny. Her pennies. Money she'd earned by standing on her feet for 12-hour shifts, by lifting boxes until her back screamed, by serving coffee to rude customers at 6 a.m. after getting 3 hours of sleep. Simone kept reading. The emails painted a clear picture. Brandon had been with Tiffany for at least a year, probably longer. He paid for her apartment. He took her on trips. He bought her gifts. He wined and dined her at restaurants Simone couldn't even afford to look at the menus of. And Tiffany knew. Of course she knew. Several emails referenced "your wife's money" or "until you're free." They joked about it. They called Simone the bank and the meal ticket. Simone closed the laptop before she put her fist through it. She lay back on the motel bed and stared at the ceiling. A water stain spread across the tiles like a dark cloud. She watched it and felt nothing. No tears. No rage. Just a cold, clear certainty. She picked up her phone and called her bank. A different bank, not the one with the joint account. The representative who answered sounded tired. I need to open a new account, Simone said. Checking and savings. Just in my name. No joint access. Absolutely. I can help you with that. Can I get your name and information? Simone rattled off her details. Social security number, address, employment information. When the representative asked for her employer, Simone paused. She had 4. She gave them the information for her office job, the one with the steady paycheck and direct deposit. And will you be making an initial deposit today? Not yet, Simone said. But soon. She hung up and opened a note on her phone. Started making a list. 1. Change direct deposit to new account. 2. Document everything. Print emails, bank statements, transfer records. 3. Find a lawyer. 4. Find a new place to live. 5. Get out. Her phone buzzed. Brandon again. Starting to worry. Where are you? Text me back. Simone typed a response. Sorry, had an emergency. Staying with a friend. Be back soon. The lie came easily. Too easily. But then again, she'd been living a lie for 2 years. What was one more? Brandon's response came seconds later. Okay, cool. Was gonna order pizza. Want me to save you some? She almost laughed. He wasn't worried. He was mildly inconvenienced that his maid wasn't there to clean up after him. No thanks, she typed back. She spent the next day at the public library printing documents. The librarian gave her concerned looks as page after page rolled out of the printer. Bank statements showing the transfers. Emails between Brandon and Tiffany. Credit reports showing the debts had been paid off 8 months ago. Screenshots of Brandon's social media, which she'd never thought to check before, showing him and Tiffany at restaurants, beaches, concerts. He'd tagged her in some posts. Not by name, just having a great time, and life is good. But Tiffany had commented on all of them. Heart emojis. Inside jokes. References to their next adventure. It had been right there the whole time. Brandon hadn't even been careful. He just assumed Simone was too tired, too trusting, too stupid to look. He'd assumed wrong. By the 3rd day, Simone had everything organized in a folder. She'd called 3 lawyers from the motel phone. The first 2 didn't inspire confidence. The third, a woman named Patricia Henderson, had listened to Simone's story without interrupting. Do you have documentation? Patricia had asked. All of it. Good. How soon do you want to move on this? Yesterday. Patricia had made a sound that might have been approval. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring everything you have. We'll go through it and discuss your options. What are my options? Divorce, obviously. But also, if he's been fraudulently taking money from joint accounts for personal use, especially while misleading you about debt status, there might be grounds for fraud charges. At minimum, you can sue for reimbursement. But we'll need to review everything first. Simone had thanked her and hung up. Then she'd allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. Just one. She smiled at the water-stained ceiling and felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Not hope that Brandon would change or that they could fix things or that love would conquer all. That fantasy had died in the garage 3 nights ago. This was different. This was hope that she could fix herself. That she could get out. That she could make him pay for what he'd done. Simone checked out of the motel on the morning of the 4th day. She drove home, walked through the door, and found Brandon right where she'd left him. On the couch. Video game controller in hand. Hey, he said without looking up. You're back. How's your friend? Fine, Simone said. She walked past him to the bedroom. You working tonight? He called after her. Yes. Can you pick up dinner on your way home? I'm craving Chinese. Simone stood in the bedroom doorway and looked at the back of his head. He was still focused on the screen, thumbs working the controller, completely relaxed. He had no idea what was coming. Sure, she said. I'll pick something up. She wouldn't, of course. But Brandon didn't need to know that yet. He didn't need to know anything until the moment his world fell apart. And Simone was going to enjoy every second of watching it happen. The next 6 weeks were the hardest and easiest of Simone's life. Hard because she had to pretend everything was normal. She had to smile at Brandon over breakfast, thank him when he reminded her about bills that needed paying, nod when he talked about his day. She had to keep working her 4 jobs, keep depositing money into their joint account, keep playing the role of the devoted wife. Easy because she knew it was temporary. Every fake smile had an expiration date. Every exhausting shift was bringing her closer to freedom. Patricia Henderson turned out to be worth every penny of her retainer fee. She was 50-something with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. When Simone had walked into her office with the folder of evidence, Patricia had spent 2 hours going through every page. "This is good," she'd said finally. "Really good. He's been sloppy. Arrogant. That works in your favor. What do I do now?" "You prepare. We'll file for divorce, but we'll also file a civil suit for fraud and reimbursement. You paid his debts in good faith based on his claims that he was unable to work. He lied about that. He diverted marital funds for personal use without your knowledge or consent. That's actionable." Simone had felt a flutter of something in her chest. Not quite happiness. Not yet. But close. "How much can I get back?" "Depends on what we can prove he took and what we can prove you paid." "Based on these documents? I'd estimate you're looking at $60,000 to $80,000. Maybe more if we can demonstrate emotional distress." $60,000 to $80,000. Almost everything she'd paid toward Brandon's debts. Almost 2 years of her life returned to her in money form. "What do I need to do?" Patricia had leaned back in her chair. "First, protect yourself financially. You said you opened a new account?" "Yes." "Good. Now you need to change your direct deposit information for all 4 jobs. Route everything to the new account. Do not put another dollar into that joint account." "He'll notice." "Eventually. But if you do it right, you can buy yourself a few weeks." "How does he usually check the account?" "He doesn't." "I do. He just transfers money out when he wants it." Patricia had smiled then. It wasn't a nice smile. "Perfect. So he's not monitoring the balance, he's just withdrawing. That means he won't realize the deposits have stopped until he tries to take money that isn't there." Simone had felt her own smile starting to form. "And by then?" "By then you'll be gone." Over the following weeks, Simone executed Patricia's plan with surgical precision. She changed her direct deposit information at all 4 jobs. The office job was easy. She just logged into the HR portal and updated her banking details. The coffee shop and cleaning service were small operations. She just told them she'd opened a new account and gave them the routing numbers. The warehouse required a paper form, but she filled it out during her break and dropped it off at the payroll office. Within 2 weeks, money stopped flowing into the joint account. Brandon didn't notice. He was too busy living his best life. Simone started looking for apartments. Nothing fancy. She didn't need fancy. She needed affordable and far enough away that Brandon couldn't just show up whenever he wanted. She found a studio in a neighborhood 30 minutes across town. Small but clean. The landlord did a credit check and called her references. She passed everything. "You can move in April 1st, the landlord said. "That work for you?" "April 1st. 6 weeks away." Simone had never been good at waiting, but this was different. This waiting had purpose. "Perfect," she said. She started moving things slowly. Small things Brandon wouldn't notice. Her favorite books disappeared from the shelf a few at a time. Her good jewelry, the pieces from her grandmother, went into her purse and then into a safe deposit box at her new bank. Photographs from before Brandon, from when she still had friends and hobbies and a life, tucked into a bag in her car trunk. Brandon noticed nothing. Why would he? He'd stopped looking at her years ago. Simone kept copies of everything. Every bank statement, every email, every text message between Brandon and Tiffany that she could access. She created a cloud backup and shared it with Patricia. She kept another copy on a USB drive that she wore on a chain around her neck, tucked under her shirt. "You're very thorough," Patricia had said during one of their meetings. "I appreciate that. I can't afford to mess this up." "You won't. Trust me, I've seen cases with half this much evidence result in very favorable outcomes. You're going to be fine." Fine. What a strange word. Simone hadn't been fine in 2 years. But maybe she could be. Maybe on the other side of all this, fine was waiting for her. She quit the waitressing job first. Told the manager she had a family emergency and needed to step back. He was disappointed but understanding. That was 1 job down, 3 to go. The cleaning service was next. She gave them 2 weeks' notice, said she needed to focus on her full-time work. They wished her well and paid her final check in cash. She deposited it in her new account and watched the balance grow. Brandon still hadn't noticed. The joint account was draining slowly as he made his regular transfers to Tiffany, but there was still enough cushion that he wasn't worried. Simone checked it obsessively, watching the balance drop like a countdown timer. 3,000 left. 2,000. 1,500. She quit the warehouse job third. That one hurt a little because the overnight shifts had been good money, but she didn't need them anymore. She needed her strength for what was coming next. Patricia filed the divorce papers on March 15th. They were scheduled to be served to Brandon on March 30th. Simone would be gone by March 29th. Where will you be when he gets served? Patricia asked. My new apartment. Good. Don't tell him where it is. Don't tell anyone who might tell him. Change your phone number if you need to. I will. And Simone? Patricia looked at her seriously. He's going to try to contact you. He's going to apologize, make promises, maybe even cry. Don't respond. Not to texts, not to calls, not to emails. Everything goes through me now. Understood? Understood. Simone went home that night and looked around the house she'd lived in for 5 years. She'd thought she'd feel sad, leaving behind all those memories. But standing in the living room, watching Brandon play video games on the couch she'd worked overtime to help buy, she felt nothing but relief. This place wasn't home. It never had been. It was just the building where she'd been used. Her real life was waiting somewhere else. On March 28th, Simone went to work at her office job like normal. She'd kept that one because it was steady, because she needed the insurance and the stability. Her boss had no idea about her other jobs, about Brandon, about any of it. She was just Simone, the reliable administrative assistant who always showed up on time. During her lunch break, she loaded the last of her things into her car. Not much. She'd been living light for years, too tired to accumulate stuff. Clothes, some kitchen items she'd paid for herself, her laptop, some books. Everything fit in 4 boxes. She worked until 5, said goodnight to her coworkers, and drove across town to her new apartment. The landlord was waiting with the keys. Welcome home, he said, handing them over. Home. The word felt strange and right at the same time. Simone spent that night unpacking her 4 boxes and setting up her new space. It was quiet. No video game sounds. No Brandon shouting at the screen. No feeling of being invisible in her own home. Just her. Just silence. Just possibility. She ordered takeout and ate it sitting on her floor since she didn't have furniture yet. She'd worry about that later. Right now she had a roof for walls and freedom. That was enough. Her phone buzzed. Brandon. Where are you? You're late. Simone stared at the message. Late. Like she was a bus or a delivery. Like her entire purpose was to show up on his schedule. She typed back. Had to work late. Don't wait up. His response was instant. K. Leftover pizza in the fridge if you want it. That was it. No, are you okay? No, drive safe. Just information about pizza. Simone blocked his number. She'd get a new phone tomorrow. For now, she just needed him silent. She lay down on the carpet in her empty apartment and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, Brandon would be served with divorce papers. Tomorrow, his perfect setup would start crumbling. Tomorrow, he'd realize that his personal ATM had shut down for good. But tonight was hers. Just hers. And it was beautiful. Brandon was served with divorce papers at 10:17 a.m. on March 30th while eating cereal in his boxer shorts. Simone knew because Patricia called her at 10:23 a.m. to tell her. Process server just confirmed, Patricia said. He's been served. How are you feeling? Simone was at work, sitting at her desk, staring at a spreadsheet. I'm okay. He's going to try to contact you. I know. Don't answer. I mean it, Simone. Not a text, not a call, nothing. I won't. Patricia paused. You sound different. Different how? Strong. Simone smiled at her computer screen. I feel different. She'd blocked Brandon's number, but he tried anyway. Her phone logged the attempts. 5 calls by noon. 10 by 2 p.m. By the time she left work at 5 p.m., he'd called 23 times. She also had emails. Her work email, which he shouldn't have had access to but apparently did. The subject lines told their own story. What is this? We need to talk. Call me now. This is a mistake. Please just talk to me. Simone deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. She stopped at the grocery store on her way home and bought actual food. Vegetables. Fresh bread. Coffee that didn't come in single-serve pods. She wandered the aisles slowly, putting things in her cart just because she wanted them, not because they were on sale or because she could eat them in her car between shifts. When she got home to her new apartment, she cooked dinner. Real dinner. Pasta with vegetables and a sauce she made from scratch. It took an hour and she enjoyed every minute of it. She ate at the small table she'd bought that afternoon, looking out her window at the street below. No one knew where she was. No one was taking her money. No one was lying to her. She was free. Her new phone number was active, but only Patricia and her job had it. The old phone sat on the counter, racking up missed calls and messages she'd never read. Eventually she'd turn it off completely. But for now she kept it on, watching the numbers climb. Proof that Brandon was panicking. Good. Patricia called on the new number. Update, he tried to call my office 7 times. My assistant has been instructed to tell him all communication goes through me. He's not handling this well. Did he say anything? A lot of things. Most of them unprofessional. The gist is that he wants to talk to you, he thinks this is all a misunderstanding, and he's ready to explain everything. Explain? Simone repeated. Right. I told him we'll be proceeding with the divorce and the civil suit. He asked what civil suit. I told him he'll find out when he's served with those papers. When is that? Monday. I'm filing everything tomorrow. He'll be served Monday morning. What happens then? He'll probably get a lawyer. They'll try to negotiate. We'll refuse any settlement that doesn't include full reimbursement plus damages. If he doesn't pay, we go to court. And if we go to court? We win. The evidence is overwhelming. He's got no defense. Simone felt a flutter of something in her chest. Not quite satisfaction. Not yet. But close. That weekend, Simone did something she hadn't done in 2 years. Nothing. She did absolutely nothing. She slept until 10 a.m. both days. She read a book. She took long showers. She went for a walk in a park near her new apartment and sat on a bench feeding ducks. She ran into an old friend at the grocery store Sunday afternoon. Natasha from college. They'd been close once before Brandon and the jobs and the exhaustion. Simone. Natasha's face lit up. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. How are you? I'm good, Simone said and meant it. They stood in the produce section and talked for 30 minutes. Natasha had gotten married, bought a house, had a baby. Her life had moved forward while Simone had been stuck in place. We should get coffee, Natasha said, pulling out her phone. Give me your number. Simone rattled off her new number and felt something warm in her chest. Connection. Friendship. A life beyond survival. I'd love that, she said. Monday morning, Patricia called at 9:15 a.m. He's been served with the civil suit. And Simone? There's been a development. What kind of development? His girlfriend called my office. Tiffany. She's claiming she didn't know he was married. Simone actually laughed. That's a lie. I have emails where she references me specifically. I know. I told her that. She hung up pretty quickly after that. Why is she calling you? Because Brandon's broke. The joint account is empty. He can't afford to pay her rent this month. She's panicking. Simone felt that flutter again. Stronger this time. Good. There's more. He tried to use credit cards to cover expenses. They're all maxed out. Has been for a while, apparently. He's been living off your money for so long he doesn't have any of his own. So what does that mean for the suit? It means he doesn't have liquid assets to pay you immediately. But he has the house. It's in both your names. We'll force a sale. Split the equity. Then we'll go after his possessions. If he doesn't have cash, we'll take what we can sell. How long will that take? Could be months. Could be a year. Depends on how much he fights. But we'll get you your money, Simone. I promise you that. After the call ended, Simone sat at her desk and tried to work. She couldn't focus. She kept thinking about Brandon's face when he realized the money was gone. When he realized Tiffany was going to leave him. When he realized that the wife he'd called a personal ATM had shut him down completely. Her old phone, sitting in a drawer at home, logged 42 more calls that day. 15 emails. 6 texts to her new number, which he must have gotten somehow. Patricia had warned her he'd be desperate. The text said things like, "We can work this out. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Please don't do this to us." Like there was still an us. Like there had ever been an us, and not just him using her. Simone blocked the new number. Changed her email password. Set up a meeting with HR to make sure no one gave Brandon any information about her. That night, she got an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was, "Please read this." She almost deleted it. But something made her click. The email was from Tiffany. "I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Brandon told me you two were separated, that you were roommates splitting bills while the divorce went through. I know that sounds stupid now, but I believed him. I didn't know he was using your money. I didn't know he was lying to you. I'm breaking up with him. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I thought you should know. I hope you're okay." Simone read the email 3 times. She tried to feel angry, but mostly she just felt tired. Tiffany had been lied to too. Maybe not as badly, but still. Brandon had built his life on lies, and everyone around him had paid the price. She typed a response, "Thank you for telling me. Good luck." She didn't elaborate. Didn't absolve Tiffany or bond with her. Just acknowledged the message and moved on. Tiffany wasn't her problem anymore. Brandon wasn't her problem anymore. They could both figure out their own lives. Simone's life was her own now, and she wasn't going to waste another second of it looking backward. She deleted the email, shut her laptop, and went to bed early. Tomorrow she was going to buy furniture for her apartment. A real bed, a real couch, maybe some art for the walls. She was going to build something that was completely, entirely hers. And it was going to be beautiful. The first thing Simone bought was a bed. Not a fancy bed. Not an expensive bed. Just a regular queen-size mattress and frame from a discount furniture store. But it was hers. She hadn't shared in the purchase decision with anyone. She hadn't asked for anyone's opinion. She'd walked into the store, tested 3 mattresses, picked the one that felt best, and paid for it with money from her new account. The delivery guys set it up in her bedroom, and after they left, Simone lay down on it and stared at the ceiling. She was wearing her work clothes. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. She had nowhere to be until tomorrow morning. She fell asleep and didn't wake up until 7 p.m. When she woke up, she felt rested for the first time in years. Really rested. The kind of rested that comes from sleeping without an alarm, without stress, without the weight of someone else's lies pressing down on your chest. She made herself dinner and ate it slowly. Then she sat on the floor because she didn't have a couch yet and made a list. Things I want to do. Take a painting class. Call Natasha and actually get coffee. Read all the books I bought but never had time for. Learn to cook properly. Go somewhere I've never been. Make new friends. Remember who I am. The list felt good. Possible. Like a map to a life worth living. Over the next few weeks, Simone worked on the list. She signed up for a beginner painting class at the community center. The instructor was a woman in her 60s named Ruth who had wild gray hair and paint-stained fingers. Never painted before? Ruth asked during their first class. Not since elementary school. Good. No bad habits to break. Just let yourself feel it. Simone picked up a brush and touched it to the canvas. The paint was thick and bright blue. She made a line, then another, then another. They didn't form anything recognizable. They were just lines. But they were her lines, and that made them beautiful. She met Natasha for coffee on Saturday morning. They sat in a corner booth and talked for 3 hours. Natasha asked about Brandon. We're divorced, Simone said simply. Well, almost. The paperwork is processing. What happened? Simone gave her the abbreviated version. The debts, the jobs, the discovery. She left out the details about Tiffany and the civil suit. It was still too raw, too complicated. I'm so sorry, Natasha said. That's horrible. It was. But I'm out now. I'm building something new. Good for you. Natasha squeezed her hand across the table. You deserve so much better. I'm starting to believe that. They made plans to meet again. Natasha invited her to a dinner party the following weekend. Just a few friends, she said. Low-key. No pressure. Simone hadn't been to a dinner party in years. I'd love that. Work became different too. Now that Simone wasn't exhausted all the time, she actually enjoyed her job. She started contributing more in meetings, volunteering for projects, staying a bit later not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Her boss noticed. You've been doing great work lately, he said one afternoon. Really impressive. Thanks. I've had more energy to focus. Well, keep it up. We're going to have a position opening soon in project management. You should apply. A promotion. Better pay. More interesting work. Simone felt a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. I will. Thank you. She started freelancing too. Small projects at first. Data entry for a local nonprofit. Some graphic design work for a friend of Natasha's. The money wasn't much, but it added up. And more importantly, it was hers. Every dollar earned went into her account, and she used it to build her life. She bought a couch, a coffee table, a bookshelf that she assembled herself, even though the instructions were confusing and she had to restart twice. She hung pictures on the walls. She bought plants and managed to keep them alive. The apartment transformed from an empty box into a home. Patricia called with updates on the divorce and lawsuit. Brandon had hired a lawyer, a guy who Patricia said was barely competent. They were fighting everything, but they had no real defense. He's claiming he didn't defraud you, Patricia said. He's saying the money in the joint account was marital property he was entitled to use. But he lied about the debts being paid off. Exactly. Which is why his lawyer is grasping at straws. We're going to court next month. Be prepared to testify. I'm ready. Good. Because he's going to try to make you look bad. He's going to say you abandoned the marriage, that you left without trying to work things out. Let him say it. I have proof of everything he did. That's the spirit. Simone had been worried about seeing Brandon in court, but as the date approached, she realized she didn't feel afraid. She felt calm, clear, ready. The night before the hearing, she laid out her outfit. Professional but not too formal. She practiced what she'd say if she had to testify. Just the facts. No emotion. No anger. Just the truth. She went to bed early and slept soundly. No nightmares. No anxiety. Just rest. At Natasha's dinner party, Simone met people who became real friends. There was Angela, a teacher who made everyone laugh. There was Jerome, a software developer who loved terrible puns. There was Monica, a nurse who had survived her own difficult divorce. It gets better, Monica told her when they were alone in the kitchen. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but it does. One day you'll wake up and realize you haven't thought about him in weeks. I'm already having days like that, Simone admitted. It's weird. Like I'm becoming someone new. Not someone new. Someone old. The person you were before he convinced you to be small. That hit Simone hard. She'd been small for so long. Small and tired and invisible. But she wasn't anymore. She was growing. Expanding. Remembering that she took up space in the world and that was okay. At her painting class, Ruth looked at Simone's latest work and nodded approvingly. You're improving. I can see you trusting yourself more. It's just paint on canvas. It's never just paint on canvas. It's how you see the world. And your world is getting brighter. Simone looked at her painting. Ruth was right. The colors were brighter now. Bolder. Less hesitant. The brush strokes were more confident. She was painting herself back to life. One evening, Simone's new phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Is this Simone Harper? A man's voice. Professional. Yes. This is Detective Graham with the County Police Department. I'm calling about a complaint filed against your husband, Brandon Harper. Simone's heart jumped. What kind of complaint? Financial fraud. A woman named Tiffany Rodriguez filed a report claiming Mr. Harper defrauded her of several $1,000s. During our investigation, your name came up. I was wondering if you'd be willing to answer some questions. Simone sat down hard on her couch. Yes, I'll answer anything you need. She spent an hour on the phone with Detective Graham, telling him everything. The lies about the debts. The secret girlfriend. The transfers from the joint account. The emails she'd found. All of it. Do you still have the documentation? He asked. All of it. And my lawyer has copies too. Would you be willing to file a formal complaint as well? Simone thought about it. The civil suit would get her money back, hopefully. But this was different. This was criminal. This could mean real consequences for Brandon. Yes, she said. I'll file a complaint. Good. I'll send you the information. Thank you for your time, Ms. Harper. After the call ended, Simone sat in her quiet apartment and felt something she hadn't expected to feel. Not satisfaction exactly. Not revenge. Just a sense that justice was happening. That the truth was coming out. That Brandon's house of lies was collapsing completely. She made herself tea and opened one of the books she'd been meaning to read. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled. People were living their lives. Going to dinner, walking dogs, heading home from work. Simone was one of them now. Not separate. Not invisible. Not working herself to death for someone else's benefit. Just living. Just being. Just herself. And it felt like the best thing in the world. The court date arrived on a Tuesday morning in late April. Simone wore a navy suit she'd bought specifically for the occasion. Professional. Put together. Nothing like the exhausted woman who used to drag herself between 4 jobs. Patricia met her outside the courthouse. Ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't let his lawyer get you worked up. You've got truth on your side. They walked in together. The courthouse was busy, full of people with their own problems, their own battles. Simone found it oddly comforting. She wasn't alone. Everyone here was fighting for something. Brandon was already in the courtroom when they entered. He sat at a table with his lawyer, a thin man in a suit that looked like it had seen better days. Brandon looked different. Thinner. His clothes were wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes. He looked up when Simone walked in, and their eyes met for the first time in over a month. Simone expected to feel something. Anger maybe. Or sadness. But she felt nothing. He was just a man who had hurt her. Past tense. Done. He started to stand like he was going to come over to her. Patricia put a hand on Simone's arm. "Don't," she murmured. Simone didn't. She walked to their table and sat down without acknowledging him. The judge entered and everyone stood. The Honorable Margaret Chin. She was middle-aged with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She looked at the paperwork in front of her and then at both tables. "This is a civil case, Harper versus Harper, regarding allegations of fraud and misappropriation of marital funds. Is the plaintiff ready?" Patricia stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Is the defendant ready?" Brandon's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Then let's begin." Patricia presented the case methodically. She showed the bank statements with the transfers. She showed the emails between Brandon and Tiffany. She showed the credit reports proving the debts had been paid off months before Brandon claimed they were still outstanding. She called Simone to the stand. Simone swore to tell the truth and sat down. Patricia asked her questions in a calm, organized way. "When did Brandon first tell you about the debts? How much did you pay? How many jobs did you work? When did you discover the truth?" Simone answered everything clearly. She kept her voice steady. She looked at the judge, not at Brandon. Then Brandon's lawyer got his turn. He was aggressive right from the start. "Mrs. Harper, isn't it true that you left the marital home without warning?" "I left after I discovered my husband had been lying to me for months." "But you didn't try to work things out. You just left." "There was nothing to work out. He'd been using me for money while maintaining a relationship with another woman. There's no working that out." "You claim he defrauded you, but the money was in a joint account, wasn't it? Money you both had access to?" "Money I earned and deposited believing it was going toward shared debts. He told me the debts were still outstanding." "That was a lie." "But you can't prove he spent your specific dollars on his girlfriend, can you?" "Money is fungible, Mrs. Harper." Patricia objected. "Misleading the witness." The judge sustained it. "Counsel, if you have a real question, ask it. Otherwise, move on." Brandon's lawyer tried a few more angles, but he had nothing. The evidence was too clear. After 15 minutes, he sat down looking frustrated. The judge called a brief recess. Simone stepped into the hallway with Patricia. "You did great," Patricia said. "He's got nothing. What happens now?" "Now we wait for the judge's ruling. Could be today, could be next week. But Simone, I'm confident. Very confident." During the recess, Brandon tried to approach Simone. She saw him coming and stepped behind Patricia. "Simone, please," he said. "Can we just talk for a minute?" "No," Patricia said firmly. "All communication goes through me. You know that. I just want to explain." "Explain to your lawyer. Leave my client alone." Brandon's face twisted. For a moment he looked angry. Really angry. Then he seemed to catch himself and the expression smoothed out. "Fine. But Simone, you're making a mistake. We could have fixed this." Simone finally spoke. "You mean I could have kept working 4 jobs forever while you lived off my money? That kind of fixed." "That's not. That's exactly what it was. And I'm done." She turned to Patricia. "Let's go back inside." The second half of the hearing focused on damages. Patricia argued for full reimbursement of the debts Simone had paid, plus compensation for emotional distress, plus legal fees. She presented a detailed breakdown. $62,000 in debt payments, $15,000 in additional money transferred to Tiffany's account, $10,000 for emotional distress. "Your Honor, my client worked 4 jobs based on fraudulent claims from her husband," Patricia said. "She destroyed her health, lost years of her life, and suffered emotional trauma. The defendant has shown no remorse. He continued his deception for 8 months after the debts were paid off. This wasn't a mistake. It was calculated exploitation." Brandon's lawyer argued that the amount was excessive, that some of the transfers were legitimate marital expenses. The judge looked unimpressed. "I'll review all the evidence and issue my ruling within 1 week, she said finally. Court is adjourned. Everyone stood as the judge left. Simone gathered her things, feeling lighter than she had in months. She'd told her truth. She'd stood up for herself. Whatever happened next, she'd done everything she could. Patricia walked her to her car. "That went very well. I really think we're going to win this." "And if we do? Then he'll have to pay. If he doesn't have the money, we'll force the sale of the house. We'll garnish any income he gets. We'll make sure you get what you're owed." Simone nodded. "Thank you. For everything. You're a good client, Simone. You came prepared. You stayed strong. That made my job easy." The ruling came 5 days later. Simone was at work when Patricia called. "We won," Patricia said, and Simone could hear the smile in her voice. The judge ruled in your favor on every count. You're awarded $75,000 plus legal fees. And Simone, she included a written statement about his conduct. She called it reprehensible and unconscionable. That's going to make the criminal case stronger. Simone sat down at her desk. $75,000. Not enough to give her back 2 years of her life, but enough to make a difference. Enough to prove that she'd been right to leave, right to fight. What happens now? Now he has 30 days to pay or we start seizing assets. The house will be sold. I've already been in contact with a realtor. We'll split the equity, and your portion plus the sale proceeds should cover most of what he owes you. And if it doesn't? Then we garnish his wages when he gets a job. Which he'll have to do now, since his free ride is over. After the call, Simone sat quietly at her desk for a long time. She thought about Brandon probably getting the news right now. Probably panicking. Probably realizing that his perfect setup had cost him everything. She thought about Tiffany, who'd filed a police report and was probably dealing with her own consequences from getting involved with a liar. She thought about herself 2 years ago, believing in promises and working herself to death for someone who saw her as nothing more than a resource to exploit. That Simone was gone. This Simone was different. Stronger. Wiser. Free. Her phone rang again. Detective Graham. Ms. Harper, I wanted to let you know we've completed our investigation. We're moving forward with fraud charges against Brandon Harper. You'll likely be called to testify at the criminal trial. I'll be there. I also wanted to thank you. Your documentation made this case. Without it, we wouldn't have had enough evidence to prosecute. I'm glad I could help. After she hung up, Simone allowed herself a small smile. Brandon hadn't just lost their marriage. He hadn't just lost his money. He was going to lose his freedom too. Maybe not for long, but long enough to understand that actions had consequences. That night, Simone went to her painting class. Ruth had them working on self-portraits. Simone looked at herself in the small mirror Ruth had provided and saw someone she barely recognized. The woman in the mirror had clear eyes, relaxed shoulders, a hint of a smile. She picked up her brush and started to paint. The house sold in June for $240,000. Simone got half the equity, which came to $78,000 after the mortgage was paid off. Combined with the judgment, it was more than enough to cover what Brandon owed her. Patricia called with the news. The money will be transferred to your account by the end of the week. Congratulations, Simone. You did it. We did it, Simone corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. You could have. You had everything you needed. I just helped you organize it. The money hit Simone's account on a Friday morning. She logged in and stared at the balance. It was more money than she'd ever had at one time. Money she'd earned, money she'd fought for, money that represented 2 years of her life returned to her. She transferred some to savings. Paid off her car. Paid the deposits on utilities she'd been carrying. Bought herself a new laptop since her old one was dying. And then she did something she'd been dreaming about for years. She booked a vacation. Nothing extravagant. Just a week at a beach resort in South Carolina. A small place with good reviews and reasonable prices. She'd go alone, bring some books, and do absolutely nothing but rest. The criminal trial was scheduled for August. Brandon had pled not guilty, which meant it was going to trial. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Mills, called Simone to prepare her testimony. It's going to be similar to the civil case, Jennifer explained. We'll ask you about his claims regarding the debts, about the jobs you worked, about when you discovered the truth. His lawyer will try to discredit you, but with the documentation you provided, it's going to be difficult. What's he being charged with? Fraud, theft by deception, and identity theft. The identity theft charge is for accessing your work email without permission. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. Simone tried to imagine Brandon in prison and couldn't quite picture it. But she also didn't feel sorry for him. He'd made his choices. Now he had to live with them. In July, Simone took her vacation. She drove to South Carolina with her windows down and music playing. She checked into her hotel room and stood on the balcony looking at the ocean. It was beautiful, peaceful, completely hers. She spent the week reading, swimming, and eating at small restaurants along the beach. She met people, had conversations that went nowhere but were pleasant anyway. She watched sunsets and drank coffee on her balcony every morning. On the 4th day, she got a text from an unknown number. This is Tiffany. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know I testified against Brandon in the criminal case. I thought you should know before the trial. I hope you're doing well. Simone stared at the message for a long time. She thought about responding but decided against it. Tiffany had made her own choices, was dealing with her own consequences. They weren't friends. They weren't allies. They were just two women who'd both been lied to by the same man. She deleted the message and went back to her book. The trial started on August 15th. Simone sat in the courtroom and watched as the prosecutor laid out the case. It was thorough, detailed, and damning. Jennifer Mills was good at her job. Brandon looked worse than he had at the civil hearing. He lost more weight. His suit was cheap and ill-fitting. He kept glancing at Simone, but she never looked back. Tiffany testified first. She explained how Brandon had told her he was separated, how he'd borrowed money from her saying it was for business expenses, how he'd never paid her back. She had texts, emails, receipts. Did you know he was married and living with his wife the entire time you were involved? Jennifer asked. No. He told me they lived separately. He said the divorce was almost final. And when did you discover the truth? When his wife filed for divorce and the money stopped coming. Brandon's lawyer tried to paint Tiffany as a woman scorned, but it didn't work. She was calm, factual, and credible. Then Simone testified. She told the same story she'd told in civil court, but with more details. The prosecutor asked about her schedule, about her exhaustion, about the day she overheard Brandon bragging about his personal ATM. How did that make you feel? Jennifer asked. Like I'd been completely foolish, Simone said. Like everything I'd believed about my marriage was a lie. And what did you do after that? I planned. I documented everything. I got a lawyer. And I left. Brandon's lawyer tried the same tactics he'd used before. Why didn't you try to work it out? Isn't it true you abandoned the marriage? But the jury looked unimpressed. The evidence was too clear. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Simone wasn't in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She was at work trying to focus on a project. Patricia called her with the news. It's over, Patricia said. He's been convicted. Sentencing is in 2 weeks, but Jennifer thinks he'll get at least 3 years. Simone leaned back in her chair. Thank you for telling me. How do you feel? Relieved. Not happy exactly. Just done. That's healthy. This is the end of a chapter, Simone. Now you get to write the next one however you want. At the sentencing hearing, Simone exercised her right to give a victim impact statement. She'd written it carefully, revised it a dozen times. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, she stood up. Your Honor, Brandon Harper stole 2 years of my life. He convinced me I was helping him, supporting him, being a good wife. Instead, he was exploiting me. He turned me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone exhausted, isolated, and broken. I worked 4 jobs while he lived off my money and maintained a relationship with another woman. He laughed about it with his friends. He called me his personal ATM and his maid. She paused and looked at Brandon for the first time since the trial started. He was staring at the table. But he didn't break me. Not permanently. I got out. I rebuilt my life. I'm happier now than I ever was with him. So while I'm here to ask for justice, I also want to say thank you. Thank you for showing me who you really were. Thank you for being so careless that I found out the truth. Because now I'm free and you're the one who's trapped. I hope you use your time in prison to become a better person. But honestly, I don't care anymore. You're not my problem. You're just my past. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. The judge sentenced Brandon to 4 years in prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. He was ordered to pay additional restitution to Tiffany for the money he'd taken from her. When the bailiff led him away, Brandon looked back at Simone one more time. She met his eyes and felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No satisfaction. Just nothing. He was gone and she was free. Outside the courthouse, Patricia gave her a hug. That statement was perfect. You should be proud of yourself. I am, Simone said and realized it was true. I really am. She drove home to her apartment, made herself dinner, and sat on her couch in the quiet. Tomorrow she'd go back to work. She'd go to her painting class. She'd have coffee with Natasha. She'd live her life. Brandon's chapter was over. What came next was entirely up to her. And that felt like the biggest victory of all. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Summer turned to fall. Simone got the promotion at work. She moved into a bigger apartment with an actual bedroom and a small office space. She started taking on more freelance projects and discovered she had a talent for graphic design. Her social life expanded. Natasha introduced her to more people. She joined a book club. She started volunteering at an animal shelter on weekends. She was busy, but it was a different kind of busy. The good kind. The kind where you're building something instead of surviving something. She'd been to visit her sister in Atlanta. She'd painted enough pieces to have a small show at the community center. Ruth had been proud. "You found your voice," she'd said, looking at Simone's work. Brandon was in prison. The divorce was final. The money was in her account. It was over. Really, truly over. Or so she thought. It was a Tuesday evening in October. Simone had just gotten home from work and was changing into comfortable clothes when someone knocked on her door. "Art. Urgent." She looked through the peephole and saw Brandon. Her heart jumped into her throat. He was supposed to be in prison. How was he here? Why was he here? He knocked again. "Simone, please. I know you're in there. I can hear you. Please just open the door. I'm sick. I need help." Sick. Simone pressed her eye to the peephole. Brandon did look bad. Pale. Shaking. He was leaning against the door frame like he could barely stand. "Simone, please." His voice cracked. "I have cancer. They let me out for treatment. But I can't afford it. I don't have anyone else. Please. I'm dying. Cancer." The word hit her like cold water. No matter what Brandon had done, cancer was serious. What if he was really dying? What if he needed help and she turned him away? She reached for the deadbolt, then stopped. This was Brandon. The man who'd lied to her for 2 years. The man who'd called her his personal ATM. The man who'd only ever told her the truth when he had no other choice. Why would he be telling the truth now? "Go away, Brandon," she called through the door. "I'm calling the police." "No, wait, please. I just need money for treatment. Just a loan. I'll pay you back, I swear." "Simone, I'm dying. Don't you have any compassion?" Compassion. He wanted her compassion after everything he'd done. Simone pulled out her phone and called Patricia. It rang 3 times before she answered. "Simone? What's wrong?" "Brandon's at my door. He says he has cancer. He says they let him out for treatment." "Is that possible?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "No. He's still in prison. I got a notification last week confirming his location." "He's lying, Simone." "He's lying," Simone repeated and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "Do not open that door. I'm calling the police right now. Stay on the line with me." Through the door, Brandon was still talking. "Simone, I know I hurt you. I know I was awful. But I've changed. Prison changed me. I found God. I want to make things right. But I can't if I'm dead. Please, just help me this one time." Found God. Of course he had. Simone heard Patricia talking to someone else, giving them her address. "Police are on the way. Should be there in less than 5 minutes. Do not engage with him." "I won't." But Brandon wasn't giving up. "Fine. Don't open the door. But can you at least call an ambulance? I think I'm having a heart attack." His voice changed, became strained. "My chest, it hurts. I can't breathe." Simone looked through the peephole again. Brandon had collapsed against the door. He was clutching his chest, face twisted in pain. "Patricia, what if he's really sick?" "He's not. Simone, trust me. This is manipulation. He's trying to get you to open the door. But, listen to me. If he was having a real medical emergency, would he waste time talking? Would he be able to knock that hard? He'd be calling 911 himself. This is a show." Simone watched Brandon through the peephole. As Patricia spoke, Brandon's pain seemed to ease. He glanced at his watch, straightened up a bit, looked around the hallway like he was checking if anyone else was coming. Then he knocked again. "Okay, you got me. I'm not dying. But I am broke. The court took everything. I lost my house, my car, everything. I'm staying in a halfway house and it's hell. I just need a few $100s to get back on my feet. For old time's sake." For old time's sake. Like the old times when he'd used her as a personal ATM? "The police will be there in 2 minutes, Patricia said in her ear. Brandon must have heard sirens in the distance because his whole demeanor changed. The sick routine disappeared. Now he looked angry. "Fine," he spat at the door. "Keep your money. But you're going to regret this, Simone. You think you're so smart now? You think you won? You didn't win anything. You're still the same pathetic woman who worked herself to death because I asked her to. You'll never be anything more than that." The words should have hurt. A year ago they might have. But Simone looked at the man through the peephole, red-faced and ranting at her door, and felt nothing but pity. "Patricia, he's angry now." "Good. Let him be angry. That's his problem, not yours." The sirens got louder. Brandon heard them too. He stopped mid-sentence and looked toward the stairs. "You called the cops? Seriously? For what?" "I was just asking for help." "Step away from the door," Simone called. "The police are coming." "You know what? Forget it. You're not worth it. You never were." He kicked her door once hard enough to make her jump, then turned and headed for the stairs. Simone heard him running. Heard his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. Then heard different footsteps, heavier, coming up. Someone knocked. "Police. Is anyone hurt?" Simone opened the door to find two officers standing there. One was already talking into his radio. Suspect fled down the east stairwell. White male, brown hair, blue jacket. The other officer looked at Simone. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "I'm fine. He didn't get inside." "Can you tell us what happened?" Simone explained while Patricia stayed on the phone. The officer took notes. When she mentioned that Brandon was supposed to be in prison, his expression hardened. "We'll check on that. If he violated his release terms, he's going back immediately. Do you have a restraining order against him?" "No. I'd recommend getting one. I can help you with the paperwork." 20 minutes later, after giving her statement and getting information about restraining orders, Simone finally closed her door and locked it. Triple locked it. Then she slid down to sit on the floor with her back against it. Patricia was still on the phone. "Simone? You still there?" "I'm here." "Are you okay?" "I almost fell for it. When he said he had cancer, I almost opened the door." "But you didn't. You called me instead. You trusted your instincts. That's what matters." "What if he comes back?" "He won't. They'll catch him tonight and he'll be back in prison by morning, probably with additional charges. And we'll get that restraining order. He won't be able to come within 500 feet of you." After they hung up, Simone sat in her quiet apartment and tried to process what had just happened. Brandon had shown up at her door with lies and manipulation, the same tools he'd always used. And for a moment she'd almost believed him. But only for a moment. And then she'd done the right thing. She'd protected herself. She'd called for help. She trusted her instincts instead of his words. She thought about what he'd said before the police came. That she was pathetic. That she'd never be anything more than what she'd been. He was wrong. She was already more. She built a whole new life. She had friends, a career, hobbies, independence. She was happy in a way she'd never been with him. Brandon was the one stuck in the past, still trying to use the same old tricks, still thinking she was the exhausted, broken woman he'd left behind. But that woman was gone. She'd died somewhere between the 4 jobs and the courthouse and the new apartment. What had emerged was someone stronger. Someone who couldn't be manipulated anymore. Simone stood up, made herself tea and sat on her couch. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. This was his last gasp. His final attempt to regain control. And it had failed. She was free. Really, completely, finally free. And nothing Brandon said or did could ever take that away. 1 year later, Simone stood in the doorway of her house. Not an apartment. A house. Small, 2 bedrooms with a yard and a front porch. It was hers. She'd bought it with the money from the settlement, from her savings, from her freelance work that had grown into a full-time business. The moving truck had just left. Boxes were everywhere. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, Simone felt excited. This was a fresh start. Another one. She was getting good at fresh starts. Her phone buzzed. "Natasha. Are you settled in?" "Barely. I'm surrounded by boxes." "Perfect. We're coming over to help. Angela and Monica are with me. We've got pizza and beer. Be there in 20 minutes. You don't have to. We want to. That's what friends do." Friends. Simone had those now. Real ones. People who showed up, who cared, who celebrated her wins and supported her through hard times. While she waited for them to arrive, Simone walked through her house. The living room was bright with big windows. The kitchen had counter space and modern appliances. The second bedroom would be her office and art studio. She'd already set up her easel in there. She'd come so far. 2 years ago, she'd been working 4 jobs and living a lie. 1 year ago, she'd been in court facing down the man who'd used her. Now she was here in her own house, living a life she'd built from scratch. The doorbell rang. Natasha, Angela, and Monica crowded in with pizza boxes and supplies. "This place is amazing," Angela said, spinning around in the living room. "It's small," Simone said. "It's perfect," Monica corrected. "It's yours." They spent the evening unpacking boxes, hanging pictures, and arranging furniture. They laughed and told stories and made plans for a housewarming party. Simone looked around at her friends and felt grateful in a way she couldn't fully express. These were her people. This was her life. After everyone left, Simone took a long shower and sat on her porch with a cup of tea. The neighborhood was quiet. Peaceful. She could hear crickets and distant traffic and nothing else. Her business was thriving. She'd left her office job 6 months ago to freelance full-time. It had been scary at first, but she was making more money than she ever had working for someone else. She had regular clients, interesting projects, and complete control over her schedule. She traveled. Spent a week in New Mexico visiting an old college friend. Went to New York City for a weekend and saw 3 Broadway shows. Took a road trip through the mountains with Natasha. She kept painting. Had a small showing at a local gallery. Sold 3 pieces. Ruth had cried when she saw Simone's work on the walls. "You did it," she'd said. "You found yourself." Brandon was still in prison. She'd heard through Patricia that he was up for parole in 2 years. She'd also heard he tried to contact her through her old email address, the one she never checked anymore. She didn't read the messages. She didn't care what he had to say. He was the past. A chapter she'd closed and moved on from. The restraining order was permanent. He couldn't contact her, couldn't come near her, couldn't involve himself in her life in any way. When he got out of prison, if he got out early, he'd be someone else's problem. Not hers. Her phone buzzed again. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, this is Derek. We met at the gallery last week. You mentioned maybe getting coffee sometime. Would you be interested?" Derek. Simone remembered him. Tall, kind eyes, easy smile. He'd been looking at the same painting she was, and they'd started talking. Art, books, travel. The conversation had been easy. Natural. He'd asked for her number, and she'd given it to him without overthinking it. She stared at the text for a long moment. She'd told herself she wasn't looking for romance. She was happy alone. She'd built this life by herself, for herself. But maybe that was the point. She was happy alone. Which meant if she chose to share her life with someone, it would be because she wanted to, not because she needed to. There was power in that. Freedom in that. She typed back, "Hi Derek. Coffee sounds nice. How about Saturday afternoon?" His response came quickly, "Perfect. There's a great place near the art district. 2 p.m.? See you there." Simone set down her phone and looked out at her small yard. In the morning she'd start planting flowers. Maybe a small vegetable garden. She'd never had a yard before. Never had the time or energy to think about growing things. But she had time now. She had energy. She had a future that stretched out before her like a blank canvas. Saturday came and Simone met Derek at the coffee shop. It was casual, easy, comfortable. They talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. He was a teacher. Loved hiking. Had a dog named Charlie. He'd been divorced for 3 years and was still figuring out what his life looked like now. "It gets better," Simone said. "The figuring out part." "Yeah. You sound like you know from experience." "I do." She told him some of her story. Not all of it. Not the details. Just that she'd been in a bad marriage, had gotten out, had rebuilt her life from the ground up. "That's impressive," Derek said. "A lot of people don't have that kind of strength." "I didn't think I did either. Until I needed it." They made plans to meet again. Nothing serious. No pressure. Just the possibility of something good. Simone drove home feeling light. Not because of Derek, although he was nice. But because she'd been able to sit across from someone new and not feel afraid. Not feel like she had to protect herself or hide who she was. She was whole. She'd put herself back together piece by piece, and now she was ready to let other people see the result. That night, Simone set up her easel in her new studio and started a new painting. She didn't plan it. Didn't sketch it first. Just let the brush move where it wanted to go. Colors emerged. Bright blues and deep greens and vibrant yellows. Shapes that might have been mountains or waves or something else entirely. It didn't matter. It was beautiful because it was hers. Ruth had been right. She'd found her voice. Not just in painting but in life. She worked until past midnight, losing herself in the colors and the movement. When she finally stepped back, the painting was mostly done. Looked like freedom. Like possibility. Like a woman who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger on the other side. Simone cleaned her brushes and went to bed. She lay in the dark in her own house, in her own bed, in her own life, and felt peace settle over her like a blanket. She'd done it. She'd escaped. She'd fought back. She'd won. Not because she'd destroyed Brandon, although he'd destroyed himself well enough without her help, but because she'd built something better. Something real. Something that belonged only to her. And that was the best revenge of all. Living well. Living free. Living happy. Brandon had taken 2 years of her life. But she'd taken them back. And she'd used them to become someone he could never break again. Someone strong. Someone independent. Someone who knew her worth. In the morning, Simone would wake up in her house. She'd make coffee in her kitchen. She'd work on her projects. She'd water her plants. She'd live her life. And that life would be beautiful. Not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. Completely, entirely, wonderfully hers.